brightness flared again at her back, and this time the Roman candle caught. Fire became light, light became image, and glories she'd almost forgotten were spilling down the corridor towards her. Unleashed scenes from 1,000 movies, each with its unique association. She began, for the first time, to understand the origins of this remarkable species. It was a ghost in the machine of cinema. A son of celluloid. All right, let's get going here. Books of Blood, Volume 3. Woo! This finishes our Books of Blood coverage for now. We're going to cover the rest of them later on down the line, because I want to get to other stuff. I want to get to Imagica. I want to get to the Hellbound Heart. I want to cover the Hellraiser series. I want to do Nightbreed. Oh my god, I want to do Weave World. I want to do it all. But we're going to have to put Books of Blood on hold for a second. But we're covering the first 3 volumes, and this is the 3rd volume, Volume 3, which starts with, it's got 5 stories. First story, I think, is incredibly fitting to this channel. It is called Son of Celluloid, which, yeah, which is incredibly fitting, because on my channel we cover art house and horror films, and I am a huge, as they call it, a cinephile. That is what I am. So Son of Celluloid is awesome. It's essentially, what if film itself, what if the medium of cinema had a cancer to it? That's what I do when I'm done with books. I'm like, get the fuck away from me, book. What if cinema had a cancer? Because that's what happens here. A movie theater becomes haunted, becomes possessed, and undergoes severe transgressions. So once again, I feel like I say this in every video, but I feel that it's worth saying at the top because of the lens that we're looking through with these stories. Clive Barker is probably the most important modern author in queer literature, and most likely the most important figure in queer horror ever. He's probably the highest pillar, the most sacred pillar of them all when it comes to queer horror. His stories, be it the Hellraiser film itself, or you pick it, any one of these stories from the first 3 volumes of Books of Blood, you pick them, they're about repressed desires, because sadly, homosexuals, gays have more, queers have more, queerness has a history with having to repress who you really are for the sake of society, for the sake of your well-being, because society is still completely unaccepting of queerness. So it's about repressed desires that you can't help but feel, and about how they manifest themselves. And normally these things repress themselves in hypersexual, subdom, S&M, sadomasochistic ways, through transgressions, through offenses on the status quo of gender, the laws of physics, the physical reality of the human anatomy, of the male and female anatomy, of sex, of everything. I mean, Hellraiser, just watch any Hellraiser movie, and it's all about repression. It's all about several people with repressed desires and how they manifest themselves in demonic ways. And they get what they want, angel to some, demon to others. But we're focusing on Son of Celluloid right now. And film is nothing if not like a vehicle for normies, for you and I, people like you and me, to leave our repressed desires, to live out vicariously those kind of private, sensual desires that we wouldn't admit to anyone. That's why we could watch beautiful people on screen, but never actually touch them to betray a significant other, or betray a part of ourselves that we've established in our current social group and shared experience. We can watch these beautiful people do lurid acts, and we can drool over them, gawk at them, and still be true to who we are, because it's not necessarily a transgression, it's more like a transfiguration, because the cinema is a holy place, because that's where people go and purge their sinful ideas. So Clive Barker is actually making you confront those ideas, and it's a lovely story. For from Clive Barker, who is an incredible filmmaker in his own right, a Renaissance man, a painter, filmmaker, writer, poet, playwright. He's amazing. He's incredible. There's nothing he really can't do and can't do to near perfection. He's most perfect when he's writing literature. But, like, it's an incredible story. He told it from the perspective of Birdie, a bigger girl who the cinema really doesn't have much for, because the cinema doesn't have room for all kinds of body types, of all different kinds of women. It has room for one specific kind of spectrum. The spectrum is very limited, and you have to be very very unique, very special to fit into that limited scope. And I would die in an instant, because the way that a male character in here dies, I would die in the exact same way if I saw Marilyn Monroe before me saying, "Come over here, I want you to fuck me. I want you to fucking get it on with me. Like, I'm a goddess. I'm whatever you want me to be. I'm whatever, give me whatever you give the cinema, then. Give me it, because you give me worship. You actually give me your repressed desires. You give me your most intimate... You give me your most intimate intricacies, the most intimate geometry of your own soul is what you give me. Give me that. You're more honest with a film vicariously and silently than you are with your soulmate. So if Marilyn Monroe was standing there and saying, "Come over here and fuck me," I would be just like the character in the book that attempts to do just that. And the character in the book is cognizant of the fact that, like, no, obviously this can't be real, but at the same time, I would be glad to die for this purpose. And of course, when it goes up to Marilyn Monroe, who is one of the most stunning creatures in the world to look at, because it goes beyond beauty. Her and, like, James Dean and River Phoenix, it goes beyond beauty. It's just something that had to be photographed, had to be documented. It's one of the most beautiful accomplishments of human evolution, of human biology, is someone like Marilyn Monroe or River Phoenix. So you see Marilyn Monroe there, and he goes up to her, and her fucking vagina is full of eyeballs. It's full of all the men who stared at her and gave her a sliver of themselves, or gave them their entire selves while she was on screen, and fantasized about her constantly, because this is about intimate fantasies. This is about the quietest, intimate, repressed fantasies, because that's what film is about. And Son of Celluloid, I love that it's the Son of Celluloid. I know it's a play on Son of Frankenstein, or Son of Dracula, Son of a Monster, or whatever. But I love that it's the son, because that plays into kind of, not the queer-based horror, but definitely the gender-conscious aspects of Clive Barker's work. Film also speaks primarily to a masculine audience, and it plays on that toxic masculinity. It actually nurtures more repressed desires than you unleash out. It gives you new ones to fill there. Because maybe Clive Barker is saying that we are all filled of repressed desires, and that's what makes us at least emotional creatures, emotional primates, emotional people, emotional animals. But yeah, I would die in that exact way. So Son of Celluloid is very entertaining, and I really do like the ending with our main character, she's a bigger young woman tracking down the monster who's possessed, like, just kind of like, you know, your atypical, like kind of beautiful young girl, and she fucking kills her. She destroys the monster of celluloid, and it has to be the bigger girl. It has to be Birdie, because, like I said, film has no place for an honest body type. It has no place for a comfortable body type, because it builds imperfections, it builds anxieties, it builds neuroses, it builds repression and repressed desires, and it builds upon them in transgressions of the body type and of the gender. So the more you look at that image, the more you try to be like that image, the more you actually change your own body. You transgress against your own nature and anatomy in order to emulate that idealized form that you see on the screen. But our main character in Son of Celluloid did not do that. And I think that's wonderful. "Give your soul to me," 1,000 stars said. "I don't believe in souls," she replied truthfully. "Then give me what you give to the screen, what everybody gives. give me some love. Because you see, Birdie was never the target for the movie magic, the brainwashing that romantic cinema can have on normal people. She was never the target for it. So she never felt it. She was never under cinema's spell because she was never represented up on the screen. And that's the only reason why she was immune to the poltergeists, to the phantoms. That is cinema dying of cancer, psychotically writhing. And I would like to read one more passage here from the scene I was talking about with Marilyn Monroe seducing like kind of like a translucent succubi, and basically how I would die. But I would like to read like a little bit of a passage from it. Am I beautiful? You're a goddess, whoever you are. I'm yours. That's who I am. It was a perfect answer. She was defining herself through him. I am a function of you, made for you, out of you, the perfect fantasy. Keep looking at me. Looking forever, Ricky. I need your loving looks. I can't live without them. The more he stared at her, the stronger the image seemed to become. The flickering had almost stopped. A calm had settled over the place. Do you want to touch me? He thought she'd never ask. Incredible, incredible. Okay, so that basically, I've already touched upon a lot of that. Just the longer you fantasize about something, the more transgressive you become as a human character in your own shared drama that is human existence. And also, the more, I would say, nearly psychotic you become, the more repressed you become, the more that becomes your only primary fixation. Okay, film is great at building monomania. Just look at the fandoms out there where it's as if they've never heard of any other movie besides Star Wars or besides fucking the Avengers. Like, they've never heard of any other movie but those. It's great at creating monomania. And as it could grow with fandoms, it could grow with people. You've seen stands of just people. It's great at creating one-track obsessions. Single obsessions, which just indicate monomania. That book is great at repressed monomania. Son of Celluloid, mwah. Perfect opening to Volume 3. An excellent book. And, whew, welcome to my channel. Next up is Rawhead Rex. Rawhead Rex is awesome. What a great story. I loved Rawhead Rex. It was really creepy, really lovely, just a great fucking violent monster story. Kind of like the Skins of the Fathers that I loved so much last week, only this one is a bit more complicated, a bit more sophisticated. I like it more than the Skins of the Fathers because it has to do with baptisms. It has to do with this monster that eats children, this ancient monster that's been unearthed, and it was a monster that was buried during a time of great immigration. So this is maybe his most Lovecraftian tale, but of course Barker is not anti-immigrant. He's not anti-foreigner. This is a very different tale because he's more anti, it's about repressed desires. Because the scariest part of this book is the fact that it's framed as a rape fantasy. That this is actually the way that those who are anti-foreigner, anti-immigrant, which most creatures and like the original Dracula metaphor was about foreigners, was about immigrants, is about nativists being offed in either like genocide, biological genocide through interracial fucking and harmony, or by violence, by force. They're gonna go there and eat your kids. That is still a fear that's happening a lot today. So it's not like that's a dead fear at all. But Barker plays on that concept where Lovecraft would just end it at that and leave it to be pretty fucking racist and awful. He's a great writer, but the morals of his stories were pretty fucking detestable. Barker inverses that. He sets it up. It even says it in the book. One of the characters, before her daughter is eaten, says this feels like a menstrual nightmare, like some sort of rape fantasy. And once he said that, it clicked with me immediately. This is a rape fantasy. This is what This is what all these anti-immigration people, what all of these nativists, like huge, proud nationalist isolationists who hate foreigners or despise them on some sort of level, this is what they fantasize about. This is what they imagine would happen. Some sort of featureless character, coming around and literally like pissing all over their priests because, God can't save them now because they're pagan folk, they're awful folk. Like, this is the ultimate conservative rape fantasy. And fantasy is a really good word because it's not a rape nightmare, it's a rape fantasy. So Barker is even implying that the people who are anti-immigrant are actually secretly fucking begging for this kind of Holocaust scenario to happen. They are begging for this monster to piss all over their gods and eat their children. It's a rape fantasy. They want this monster to rape their land, to rape it, and they want to be triumphant. But the triumph is very gross, very grimy, and it's not entirely full of valor at all. Barker is insanely good here because it's scary because of how much these people, I think, subconsciously want this. Because it's a rape fantasy. It's the ultimate immigration genocide fantasy. It's lovely. I think it's super worth noting how grotesque Rawhead Rex is. Clive Barker was on fucking point in his descriptions of this carnage, in his psychology of victims before they're eaten, before they're killed, children and fathers losing their pride and joys. And then their own selves, of priests so devoted that they stand under this giant monster as it pisses all over their face and like drinks the fucking urine. And it's amazing Barker. Amazing Barker. But let's move on to Confessions of a Pornographer's Shroud, which is okay. Basically, Son of Celluloid and Rawhead Rex are really hard acts to follow. So Confessions of Pornographer's Shroud had that kind of, no one wants that kind of weight to be thrown upon them, and it feels kind of lackluster in result, but had it been placed anywhere else, I think it would have been a wonderful read-through. But Pornographer's Shroud basically boils down to a Puritan unwittingly defiling the Shroud of Turin. Of course, that's subtextual. He even describes like it animating itself almost as if like a fucking cock animating itself and like coming back to life. And then the character himself is so puritanical that he hates pornography. He can't believe that he's a part of any sort of porn ring. He doesn't like to have sex with his wife, and his wife doesn't like to have sex with him. He only has sex like once or twice a year. So when he becomes this shroud, which is the shroud placed over him in a gurney, in a fucking morgue, Barker uses language that is normally associated with eroticism of a cock getting hard, having blood pumped into it, and the shroud goes on a spree of vengeance, and there are many times, or at least one time, where it's specifically the Shroud of Turin is specifically referenced, and it even ends in a house of God with a fucking demented priest using the shroud, which is now lifeless and non-animated, to wipe up some mess, some spillage, and then puts out like a fire with his fingers because he is so full of flame, because he's like demoniac, he's kind of devilish, the priest is. But it's really just about a Puritan unwittingly defiling the Shroud of Turin. And from there we move on to Scape-Goats, which I like a lot more than Confessions of a Pornographer's Shroud. It's a bit more simple because it is simply about repressed desires. Of course, it is a story about this ship, this boat that crashes on shore on an island that they don't know anything about, that isn't on any maps. But of course, it's in a system where a lot of Gaelic writing has been inspired by this system of islands, although this island isn't on the map of them. So it is Barker also tipping his hat to the world literature that made his Gothic modernist literature and short stories possible. So basically, whatever, they're on this island, and like the dead raise up, and like they piss off people and kill some sheep, and like everybody dies. Everybody dies because they upset all the countless numbers of soldiers and people who drowned and washed ashore there. But the real fruit of it is our main character, Frankie, a woman. It's about her repressed desires to be with the skipper of the boat, to be with him, and the different ways it manifests itself through transgression, so through offending sexuality, gender, and laws of attraction. But as she is dying, like, the skipper's zombified corpse is putting his head to Frankie's, and it's like, it's very overt, because it's like, oh, my desires is coming full, like he wants me, but I can't even take pleasure in this moment. So it is really about a single, centralized, repressed desire, but it's written so wonderfully, and it's so much fun to read, and it's violent, and it's hypersexual, and it's grossly erotic, it's subdom, it's S&M, it's everything you want from a Barker tale. Which brings us to Human Remains. Now, I don't know why, I mentioned his name earlier, but most of the time when it's a young male, either protagonist or antagonistic main character, doesn't matter, I always imagine River Phoenix. Like as the Clive Barker hero. Maybe it's because River Phoenix has a kind of like gay icon status, especially in like My Own Private Idaho and stuff like that. I don't know why, I just imagine River Phoenix all the time. So Gavin in Human Remains imagined as River Phoenix immediately, because the character itself is a streetwalker, is a hustler, is a male prostitute, much like his role as the narcoleptic dreamer in My Own Private Idaho, which I just referenced. And it's about doppelgangers, and a doppelganger, of course, is an immersion of a new self. But it's Clive Barker, so you have to use the words repressed and transgression. Because, I mean, a doppelganger forming in actuality is a transgression against the laws of the universe. That just can't fucking happen. The laws of psychology, the laws of physics, the laws that goes against every piece, every infinitesimal piece of the framework that holds together reality. So there's the transgression, and the repression, I'm sure you could guess this, is that this doppelganger, this other Gavin, this new, slightly improved Gavin, not slightly, just much more improved Gavin, is everything that Gavin was keeping inside. He was not what he dreamed he'd be or promised his secret self, and youth was yesterday. I bet it's very human to feel like that, like the passage I just read. I bet it's very human. And that the punchline of this story is that Gavin allows this doppelganger to assume his role and wanders off, because the doppelganger is doing a better job at being the real McCoy, at being the genuine article. Just doing a better job at it. Well, that completely wraps up Books of Blood, Volumes 1, 2, and 3. Thank you guys for watching this video. Clive Barker rules. From here, we're gonna move on to other cool stuff. His fucking list of creative output is just so long. I'm gonna die before we're done with this. It's an inevitability. But had a lot of fun covering the first 3 volumes of Books of Blood. And why don't you comment down below? Tell me which Clive Barker short story was your favorite from this initial 3 volumes of Books of Blood. Which ones were your favorites? And also comment in the bottom and tell me just how fucking attractive I am today. Because, you know, always love hearing that. How smart I am and stuff. Come on, bruh. And, yeah, subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share this video with other Barker fans or other fans of horror literature. And, next week we're gonna do something different, something fun, something awesome. And, yeah, just remember, as always, everybody is a book of blood.